Hello and welcome to the Columbia Daily Tribune's Courtside View basketball webcast. This is Tribune sports editor Joe Walljasper along with Tribune basketball beat writer Steve Valentik. Steve, Missouri opens its season successfully against Southern Illinois Edwardsville. As of this taping, they're getting ready to play Alcorn State, and then they prepare for a little tougher competition in the battle for Atlantis. Characteristic of last year's team was in the early going when they faced BCS conference type competition, they really came out of the gates and were impressive early on in November and December. This year's team, do you see that same sort of characteristics, or is it going to take longer for them to figure things out?
I think it's going to take a little bit longer. I mean, you look at last year's team and they had so many parts that had worked together before, even if the system was a little bit different. There was a cohesiveness that I think this group's still trying to find. Really the eye-opening moments last year were when they went to Kansas City and they played Notre Dame and Cal on back-to-back nights and really just blew both of them off the floor. I don't see that sort of thing happening when they go to the Bahamas next week. Number one, I think the competition down there is going to be better than they faced in Kansas City. And number two, I do think there are a lot of new pieces that are still working their way into some sort of cohesive unit right now.
Yeah, I remember last year I left Kansas City thinking, I'm not sure how good Missouri is, but I think Notre Dame is the slowest team I've ever seen, and Cal is super overrated. But then as the year went on, Notre Dame had a great season, Cal had a pretty good season, and Missouri
ended up being in the top five for most of the year.
So it'll be interesting how that goes. But I think last year their limitations were more size and just number of bodies. This year, that's not the issue at all. I think it's just, but what they did have last year was I think they pretty quickly figured out how they needed to play. I think the more people you add to the mix and the more that there are people who are not used to being here, the more the human element comes in and you're having to get them to understand how you want them to play. So I don't know if, I would guess it may take till January till he figures out quite what he wants to do.
I think that's probably true. And I think win or lose, what happens in the Bahamas will be good for them because it really should be a measuring stick to see where they're at and where they do need to improve. You don't learn nearly as much playing Alcorn State or Nicholls State as you're going to learn playing Stanford and then potentially Louisville and then maybe Duke, Memphis, somebody like that. I think there were encouraging signs from the opener in that Phil Pressey is Phil Pressey. He had a great game. Really bailed them out in the first half with 13 points, and he's not a guy who necessarily looks to score, but he can do it when he has to, and he certainly was effective. And then the biggest bright spot I thought was Lawrence Bowers coming back from his injury in the first real game that mattered, and he got in foul trouble in the first half, only had 2 points, but just exploded in the second half. He had 10 straight, really put some distance between them and SIUE, and he's not necessarily quite the same player he was before, but in some ways he might be better. I think he's a better shooter than he was before, and he really showed that, knocking down 4 or 5 mid-range jump shots, and I think can be a real weapon for them as the year goes on, and I think the coaching staff had to be encouraged by that.
Another eye-opener from that game was that Webster Chan plays 34 minutes, I believe. How much of that you think was Frank Haith, a vote for Webster Chan, or how much was it a vote against what he was seeing from Keon Bell or Ernest Ross?
Well, I think it was certainly a little bit of both, and I think Frank sort of told us that after the game with one of his comments was that some guys need to be paying attention or he could pass them up, and but he's really been raving about Negus for a month now, and he's a guy who I think was behind a little bit because he didn't get the summer like other people, but he's really come on in practice and then the last exhibition and into last Saturday. Can make the three when left open. He showed that. Handles the ball well, is 6'7". They love his versatility. And played 34 minutes, which is crazy to think that a true freshman would do that, but didn't turn the ball over once, and he was handling the ball. So I think Frank feels really comfortable with him on the floor right now and that he's not going to make mistakes.
Okay. Well, thanks for joining us, and tune in again next week when we will discuss Missouri's first major challenges at the Battle for Atlantis.